I didn't think a single notification could change the way I saw every person I'd worked beside for years. But lying there in a hospital bed, with morphine warming my veins and dried blood still stuck to my hairline, I felt my throat close the moment I read it. I woke up to the sound of machines, steady beeps, a low oxygen hum, and the soft drag of rubber soles on linoleum. I didn't know where I was at first. Everything was white, sterile, too bright. My left arm wouldn't move without a lightning bolt of pain, and my ribs felt like someone had slammed a car door on my chest. A nurse leaned over me, adjusting something near my shoulder. "You're lucky," she said quietly. "The beam missed your spine by inches." The beam. Right. The warehouse, the crash. The shout I never finished. She told me I'd need scans, maybe more x-rays, a full evaluation. She asked if I had someone to call. I didn't. I asked for my phone instead. I shouldn't have. God, I shouldn't have. The screen lit up with a dozen missed notifications from our company's internal app. At first I thought people were checking in. Maybe someone asked if I was okay. Maybe someone cared. I opened the first message. It was a screenshot from the warehouse group chat. Not a get well soon. Not even a what happened. A post from my manager, Mark. "Looks like we'll need to replace Eric sooner than expected." Underneath it, "No worries, folks. Nobody's irreplaceable." Dozens of likes. A few laughing emojis. One coworker added, "Time to upgrade the model." I stared at the screen as if it belonged to someone else. My chest tightened, not from the injury, but from the sudden realization that the people I'd sweated beside for years thought of me as a joke, a broken tool to be swapped out. I'd trained half of them, covered shifts, pulled doubles, stood in for holidays so others could be home with their families. Morphine couldn't numb that. Another notification popped up while I was still reading the first one, this time from someone in accounting. Guess safety protocols finally caught up with him. I locked the phone, set it on my chest, and stared at the ceiling tiles until they blurred together. I felt hollow. Not angry, not sad, just empty, like something had been scooped out of me. A doctor came in, asked me some questions, pushed on my ribs until I winced, ordered a CT scan. I nodded through everything, barely hearing his words. All I could think about was that message, that stupid grinning emoji. When they wheeled me down the hallway, I tried to replay the accident in my head. The metallic groan, the shift in weight, the way the whole rack trembled before the beam came down. I remembered shouting to Tyler to move. I remembered the flash of pain, and then nothing. But I remembered Mark earlier that day, standing near the scaffolding, tapping the beam with his boot and saying, "It's fine," when I pointed out the loosened bracket. I remembered him brushing me off. "Stop overthinking. We need to hit quota, not write a safety manual." I had trusted him, trusted that he cared about our crew even a little. Back in the hospital room after the scan, I reached for my phone again, like poking a bruise just to feel something familiar. More messages, more jokes. Someone had shared Mark's post to the company's public board. "Open position on the floor. Anyone interested?" I should have stopped reading, but I didn't. I scrolled, and every new comment felt like another hand pushing me deeper underwater. Then at the very bottom, I saw one I hadn't expected, from my shift partner, Tyler, the guy I pulled out of the way seconds before the beam hit me. "Why are we joking about this? He saved my ass. The beam should have hit me." One reply underneath from Mark. "Relax, kid. It's humor. We all cope differently." Humor. My lungs burned. I put the phone down and closed my eyes, but the words followed me like an echo. Replace him. Nobody's irreplaceable. Upgrade the model. I thought about calling HR. Thought about calling my brother. Thought about calling anyone. But instead, I just lay there, listening to my heartbeat in the monitor, steady and mechanical, the only thing in the room that didn't feel like it was laughing at me. Hours passed. Nurses came and went. A janitor emptied the trash. A tech adjusted my IV. I didn't speak to any of them. I didn't want to hear my own voice tremble. As evening settled, the hospital room dimmed. Shadows stretched across the floor, and outside the window, The parking lot lights flickered on, buzzing faintly. I picked up my phone one more time, telling myself I needed a distraction. Instead, I saw a new post from Mark. A photo of the damaged scaffolding. My scaffolding, the one that nearly killed me. His caption, "When employees break your equipment and your schedule." My stomach dropped. Not just jokes now, not just humor. He was blaming me. Publicly, while I couldn't even stand. I felt something shift inside me. A small, quiet click. Not rage, not even pain. Something colder, something steadier. I scrolled again, and that's when I saw the last thing I expected. Something so casually cruel, it made the world tilt for a moment. A comment from Mark's supervisor. "Good initiative keeping morale high. We'll discuss replacements when you're back on site." My fingers froze. Replacements. Plural. That was when I understood. This wasn't just a joke. It was a message, a warning, and maybe something else entirely. And as the monitor beeped steadily beside me, I realized something I'd never allowed myself to think before. People like them don't stop at one joke. People like them keep going until someone stops them. I didn't know how yet. I didn't know when. I barely knew if I could sit up without passing out. But I knew one thing, clear, sharp, undeniable. This wasn't over, not even close. But that was just the beginning. The second morning in the hospital felt heavier than the first. Not because of the pain, though that was still there, deep and grinding, but because I'd finally stopped pretending the messages were a misunderstanding. I woke up to another round of labs, another scan, another nurse asking me to rate my pain on a scale of 1 to 10. But the real ache sat behind my ribs like a second heartbeat. I checked my phone out of habit, hoping maybe someone had reached out privately. Nothing. Not a single text from Mark. Not a single check-in from HR. Not even a "how are you" from the guys I'd eaten lunch with every day for 3 years. The warehouse chat had gone silent, not out of respect for me, but because they'd removed me from it. I only noticed when I tried to open the thread and the app said, "You no longer have access to this channel." That stung more than the broken rib. It was as if the moment I couldn't clock in, I ceased to exist. By noon, boredom gnawed at me, so I opened my email. That was when I saw the first forwarded screenshot, sent anonymously. No subject line, no signature, just a single message. "You should see this. Thought you'd want to know." Attached was a capture from an internal private chat I hadn't even known existed. "Mark, once he's out of the way, we can finally push for productivity bonuses." Another manager. "Maybe this accident will teach others not to get in the way of progress." Progress! I stared at that word for a long time. They were talking about my crushed shoulder and fractured ribs like it was an inconvenient malfunction in a machine. Like I was a broken gear slowing down their conveyor belt. Anger didn't hit me all at once. It seeped in gradually, warming my blood until my palms shook. I read the message again. Then I did something I hadn't planned on doing. I started saving everything. Screenshots, dates, timestamps, the anonymous email, Mark's public posts, every joke, every emoji, every remark that chipped another piece off what I thought my workplace was. I organized them into folders, separated by type, public comments, private messages, supervisor involvement, safety violations. I didn't know what I'd do with it yet, but I knew I would do something. I wasn't going to be their punchline. A respiratory therapist came in to help me stretch my arm, but even while she adjusted the sling, half my mind was still cataloging everything I'd seen. She told me I was recovering well. I nodded, pretending to listen. My attention was elsewhere, on a memory I didn't want but couldn't ignore. 2 months earlier, I'd pointed out the first signs that the scaffolding wasn't stable. A slight shift, a vibration when someone walked past, a rattle when the forklift rolled by. Mark had waved me off. "It's fine. It's within tolerance. Stop whining." I didn't push harder. I didn't escalate it. I didn't file a report. Because I trusted him. And now I was lying in a hospital bed, reading jokes about replacing me like a bad part. Later that afternoon, a physical therapist showed up to help me walk a few steps. The pain shot down my side, sharp enough to steal my breath. I clenched my jaw, trying not to show it. But the therapist wasn't the problem. The problem was my phone buzzing again in my pocket. Another anonymous message. Another screenshot. This time from a different group chat. Someone had written, "Hope he's milking that hospital stay. Wish I could get paid to lie around." Mark replied, "Trust me, if he could come back, he would. But maybe a new hire will give us some fresh blood." Fresh blood? I stopped walking. The therapist thought it was the pain. It wasn't. I slowly sat back in bed, breathing through my teeth. That was when I realized something. None of this was about me personally. They didn't hate me. They didn't even think about me. To them, I was a line item, a shift, a labor unit, a number on the schedule. And now I was an empty space on that schedule they needed to fill. That was all. It shouldn't have hurt. But it did. In the evening, Tyler texted me again. "Hey man, how are you holding up? I'm sorry about everything they said. I didn't think they'd... Then another. "Mark told us not to reach out to you directly. Said it could be a liability issue." Liability. So I wasn't a friend. I wasn't a teammate. I was paperwork. That's when the anger finally settled into something colder, more focused. I opened a blank note on my phone and typed out everything I remembered from the day of the accident. Every warning I'd given, every time Mark dismissed a concern, every detail of the scaffold's condition, the missing bolts, the warped beams, the way the bracket had looked bent even a week ago. And as I wrote, my fingers shook with clarity, not fear. Later that night, I got a call from HR. A monotone voice said, "We hope you're recovering well. Please notify us once you have a projected return date." No apology, no concern, just schedule management. I asked if they'd seen the posts about replacing me. The HR rep hesitated. "We don't monitor informal communication unless it involves explicit threats." "So mocking an injured employee is okay?" I asked quietly. Another pause. "It's not ideal, but it's not an HR matter." I hung up without saying goodbye. I lay there in the dim light, listening to the machines beep in their calm, indifferent rhythm. For a moment, I felt small, like the kind of small that makes you think nothing you do will matter. But that feeling didn't last, because as I scrolled through the folder I'd created, the screenshots, the messages, the dates, I began to see something different. A pattern, a chain, a story that wasn't just mine, but everyone's who'd ever been told to stop causing trouble or just follow orders, even when things weren't safe. My phone buzzed one last time before midnight. It was another anonymous email. This one wasn't screenshots. It was a PDF. A copy of an internal maintenance report from 3 days before my accident. Stamped in red. "Do not use. Structural compromise. Repairs required." The signature at the bottom. "Mark." I sat up despite the pain. The monitor beeped faster. My vision sharpened. He knew the scaffold was unsafe. He'd signed off on it anyway. And then he joked about replacing me when it finally failed. I stared at the document, the weight of everything settling into place. This wasn't an accident. It was negligence, and it wasn't going away quietly. I didn't know it yet, but that decision would cost them everything. That night, I stopped being the hero. 2 weeks after the accident, the doctor finally said the words I'd been waiting for and dreading at the same time. "You can go home today." Home. I didn't know if I still had one. My shoulder was strapped, my ribs still ached with every breath, and I moved like someone had swapped my bones for glass. The nurse wheeled me down to the entrance, handed me discharge papers and a plastic bag with my meds. I stepped out into the parking lot, air, and felt untethered. Nobody from work came to pick me up. Nobody sent flowers. Tyler offered, but his voice over the phone carried a tightness that said he was already in trouble just for talking to me. So I took a rideshare home, sat in the back seat, and scrolled through my folders again. Screenshots. the maintenance report, the HR call, every piece of proof that said in silent letters, this was preventable. When I got to my apartment, I didn't go lie down like the doctor had suggested. I made coffee one-handed, sat at the kitchen table and opened my laptop. I typed workplace injury lawyer into the search bar. Halfway through scrolling, I hesitated. I'd never sued anyone in my life, never even thought about it. I was the work hard, keep your head down, things will work out type. But things hadn't worked out. They'd nearly killed me, and then laughed about it. I picked one firm with decent reviews and a free consultation and filled out the contact form. I kept it simple. Injured at work due to ignored safety report. Supervisor mocking injury publicly. Have documentation. They called me back within an hour. The lawyer's name was Peterson. His voice was calm, slow, like nothing surprised him anymore. He asked me to tell him what happened, from the beginning. I did. I told him about the scaffold, the beam, the maintenance report. I told him about Mark's messages, the jokes, the replace him post. I forwarded everything. He didn't interrupt once. When I finished, there was a pause. Then, you did the right thing by saving all of that. I exhaled without realizing I'd been holding my breath. Do I have a case? I asked. You don't just have a case, he said. You have a pattern. Negligence, retaliation, hostile environment. This isn't just about your injury. It's about everything around it. I swallowed. What happens now? First, we file a formal complaint with OSHA. Then we notify the company of representation and instruct them to direct all communication through us. Do not talk to HR or your manager alone. Do not agree to any informal meetings. And if they try to pressure you, you call me. The word pressure landed harder than he probably meant it to. I thought of Mark telling the others not to reach out to me. Liability, replace him, keep morale high. Okay, I said quietly, do it. After I hung up, the apartment felt too small. I walked from room to room, restless, every step a reminder of my bruised body. There was a part of me that still expected a call from Mark, some half-hearted apology, some attempt to smooth it over. Instead, I got an email. Subject line, return to work discussion. HR, we'd like to schedule a call to discuss your expected return date, possible modified duties, and any accommodations needed. There was no mention of the accident being their fault, no acknowledgement of the safety report, nothing about the posts. I forwarded the email to Peterson. 5 minutes later, he replied, I will handle all communications. Do not respond. For the first time since the accident, I smiled, just a little. The next week blurred into phone calls and forms. Peterson filed the OSHA complaint. We went through every detail of the maintenance report and the timeline. He asked me about previous near misses, about any other unsafe equipment, about how management usually handled complaints. I told him the truth. They didn't handle them. They buried them. He asked if I knew any ex-employees who'd left over safety concerns. I thought of Luis, who'd quit the year before after a pallet cage collapsed. I still had his number. I texted him, filled him in. There was a long pause before he responded. Yeah, I remember that scaffold. I remember Mark saying it was fine. I'll talk. One by one, names started coming to mind. People who'd shrugged off their exits as better opportunities, but had hinted at not feeling safe or management not listening. I reached out. Some ignored me. Some responded cautiously. A few agreed to talk to Peterson. A week later, the company finally reacted. It started with a certified letter, thick envelope, company logo on the corner. Inside was a carefully worded statement about our commitment to employee well-being and our concern for your recovery. And then, buried in the third paragraph, we were surprised to learn you have engaged legal representation and filed an external complaint. We believe this matter can be handled internally and amicably. Please contact HR to schedule a meeting. I read it twice, then sent a photo to Peterson. He called me immediately. They're nervous, he said. Good. Don't answer them. From now on, they go through me. 2 days later, OSHA reached out. An investigator wanted to schedule a site visit and an interview with me. We arranged a video call. I sat at my kitchen table again, shoulders aching, and told the story one more time. This time to someone whose job was literally to care about the details Mark had ignored. The investigator listened, took notes, asked specific questions about dates, names, procedures. When I showed them the maintenance report, their expression changed. This was signed before the accident? They asked. 3 days before, I said. And the equipment was still in use? Yes. They exhaled slowly. All right. Thank you, Mr. Hayes. We'll be in touch. I ended the call and sat there, staring at my reflection in the black laptop screen. I barely recognized myself. Same face, same eyes. But something in the way I held my jaw was different, tighter, harder. A few days later, Tyler called. His voice was low, like he was hiding in a corner. Hey, man, he whispered. You didn't hear this from me, okay? All right, I said. OSHA's here, he said. Inspectors. Clipboards. They're taking photos of the scaffold, asking about procedures, pulling logs. Mark's freaking out. He pulled us into the break room and told us to keep our stories consistent. My stomach twisted. Consistent with what? I asked. With his, Tyler said. He wants us to say we never complained about the scaffold, that nobody reported anything, that it just, failed. And what did you say? I asked quietly. There was a pause. I told them the truth, he said. I told them you warned him. Twice, maybe more. I closed my eyes for a second. Tyler, they might make your life hell after this. They already were, he said. At least now it's for a reason. After we hung up, I walked to the window and looked out at the parking lot, the rows of cars, the people who could go to work without wondering if the ceiling might fall on them. My phone buzzed again. This time, it was Jenna from shipping. They're tearing into Mark's office. OSHA asked for all his emails about maintenance. He looks like he's going to pass out. Another message from someone else followed minutes later. Dude, they just shut down the whole row with the scaffold. Said it never should have been cleared for use. I sat down slowly, letting the words settle over me. This wasn't just about me anymore. It was the whole place, the whole rotten way things had been run. That evening, while I was heating up dinner, my phone rang. Mark's name flashed across the screen. For a second, my old instincts flared up. I almost answered, almost gave him the chance to spin some story, to guilt me, to make it sound like I was overreacting. Then I remembered Peterson's voice. Do not talk to them alone. I let the call go to voicemail. A minute later, we need to talk. This is going too far. You're putting everyone's jobs at risk. I stared at the message, then typed a simple reply. All communication goes through my attorney. I hit send. My hands weren't shaking this time. The next day, Peterson called with a tone I hadn't heard from him yet. OSHA moved fast, he said. They've already found multiple violations. That maintenance report you had? That's their smoking gun. They're opening a formal investigation into the company. My chest loosened a little. What does that mean? It means your manager is in serious trouble, he said, and the company knows it. 2 days later, I got another anonymous text from an unknown number. A photo of Mark's office door, yellow tape across it. A printed notice taped above the handle. Supervisor placed on administrative leave pending investigation. Underneath the photo, the sender had written, Thought you'd want to see this. I zoomed in on the picture until the pixels blurred. I wasn't smiling. I wasn't cheering. I just felt something settle in my chest that had been knocked loose since the day of the accident. They thought I was gone. I wasn't. 3 weeks after OSHA closed off the scaffold line, the company sent out an all-staff email with the kind of careful corporate language that tries to hide panic behind bullet points. Subject line, temporary leadership adjustments. Adjustments. That was their way of saying Mark was gone. The email didn't mention me, didn't mention the accident, didn't mention the violation report that had ballooned into nearly 30 pages. It simply stated that supervisory responsibilities will be redistributed pending internal review. No one believed a word of it. By then, half the warehouse knew what had happened, even the ones pretending they didn't. OSHA investigators had walked through every aisle, pulled every log, interviewed every shift. People whispered more in those 2 weeks than they had in 2 years. A rumor spread, quiet but persistent, that OSHA found multiple falsified maintenance reports connected directly to Mark. I didn't celebrate. I didn't tell anyone, "I told you so." I didn't even feel triumphant. It felt like watching a structure collapse that had been leaning for years. You don't cheer when it falls. You just stand back and let it hit the ground. Peterson called me the morning after the email went out. "Well," he said, "the company has changed its tone." "How changed?" I asked. "They'd like to propose a settlement before this goes further." I leaned back against the couch, careful with my ribs. Meaning, he said, "they're scared." It wasn't bitterness I felt then. It wasn't revenge. It was something quieter, something cleaner. Relief. He walked me through the terms: compensation for lost wages, medical coverage for ongoing treatment, a safety compliance audit paid by the company, and a written acknowledgement that the equipment failure resulted from management negligence. "And one more thing," Peterson added. "They're agreeing to remove Mark permanently. No reassignment, no transfer." I didn't speak for a long moment. "You okay?" he asked. "Yeah," I said. "Just processing," he exhaled. "Eric, this is a rare outcome. Most people don't get this far. Most people get buried in paperwork and fear and give up." "I'm tired," I admitted. "That's normal," he said. "But you won." I didn't feel like I'd won anything. Not yet. A week later, I went back to the warehouse, not as an employee, but to collect the last of my personal tools. They'd boxed up and locked in a cabinet. Peterson advised me not to speak with anyone beyond HR. I didn't plan to. I stepped through the doors, and for a second it felt like stepping back into a memory I no longer lived in. The lights buzzed overhead. The forklifts beeped in the distance. The smell of dust and cardboard and cold metal hit me like a wave. But something was different. The place felt smaller, like I had finally grown out of a skin I didn't realize had been too tight. HR led me to a small room, slid a box across the table, and asked me to sign a release form confirming I'd retrieved my property. The HR rep didn't look me in the eye. I didn't force it. As I was leaving, I passed the break room. Conversation stopped when I walked by. A few people nodded. One or two looked ashamed. Most just looked uncertain, like they didn't know what the right reaction was. I didn't blame them. Outside the building, Tyler was waiting by the bike rack. He looked nervous, hands shoved in his pockets. "Hey," he said quietly. I stopped. "Hey." "I heard you're leaving for good." "Yeah." He nodded, then swallowed. "I just wanted to say thank you for what you did, for telling the truth. If OSHA hadn't come, we'd still be working under him. Worse things could have happened." I met his eyes. "You told the truth, too. That matters." He shook his head. "Not like you did." For a moment, neither of us spoke. The air felt lighter between us than it ever had. "Take care of yourself," he said. "Seriously." "You too," I replied, and meant it. When I got home, I stood in the doorway for a long time before closing it. The apartment felt different now. Not like a place I was stuck in while recovering, but like a beginning. The settlement paperwork came 2 days later. I sat at the kitchen table and read every word: compensation, medical coverage, acknowledgement of negligence, agreement to terminate Mark. No clauses that blamed me, no wording that softened their responsibility, no hidden traps. I signed it. When it was done, I turned off my phone, stepped outside, and walked further than I had since leaving the hospital. My body still hurt, but it didn't feel fragile anymore. I found a small park a few blocks away, sat on a bench, and watched people walking dogs, kids chasing each other, a jogger cutting across the path. Life was happening everywhere, and for the first time in months, I felt like I was part of it. Again. The next week, I got a job offer from a different company, one I'd applied to quietly while everything was still unfolding. Smaller team, safer environment, no rush it and hope it holds mentality. During the interview, the supervisor asked me what I valued most in a workplace. I didn't hesitate. Respect, I said. He nodded like he understood the weight behind the word. I started there the next month. On my first day, I hung my new badge on my belt and walked through the facility. Everything was clean, organized, calm. The equipment gleamed. People greeted me without hesitation. No one joked about replacements. No one looked over their shoulder before saying hello. At lunch, one of the guys asked me how my last job ended. I looked at him for a long moment. Long story, I said. He laughed. Fair enough. You'll tell it when you feel like it. I didn't respond. I just took a bite of my sandwich and watched sunlight spill through the windows. Later that evening, after my first shift, my phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. I opened it without thinking. It was from Mark. A single sentence. You ruined my life. I stared at the screen, not angry, not satisfied. Just done. I typed back, I didn't ruin anything. I just stopped letting you ruin mine. I blocked the number, set the phone down, breathed. The quiet in my apartment didn't feel empty anymore. It felt earned, solid, real. I made dinner slowly, moving without rushing for the first time in what felt like years. After I ate, I stepped out onto the balcony. A soft evening breeze moved through the trees, carrying the faint smell of rain somewhere far off. And standing there, looking out over the street, I realized something I hadn't been able to admit before. They never needed to replace me. They needed to replace the people who thought I was disposable. Turns out, I wasn't the one they needed to replace.